Peptides have literally changed my life, getting back into the best shape of my life right now. But most importantly, getting my brain function back to better than ever. I don't even have words for it. And that's when I said, oh, I think there's something here.
Welcome, everybody, to the Chris Harder Show, where we are making you unapologetic about your pursuit of success, knowing that when good people like you make good money, they can then do great things. My name is Chris Harder, and several times per week, I will bring you epic guests, solo episodes, and every single tool, trick, and skill set you need to grow your business, grow your money mindset, and to grow your wealth to levels that you have never reached before. I've ended up in a unique place in life where I've got the experience, the connections, and all of the secrets that it takes to be successful. And I'm lifting the curtain to reveal it all to you in an effort to help put you in a position of abundance so great that you can then be as generous as possible. So let's lock arms and let's get started.
And we're back.
It was another episode of He Said, She Said.
Guys, we have a really cool episode today because, we always talk about business interests that Lori and I are involved in and, what we're doing and where the tide is going and all that stuff. And today we're actually going to share a story about a company that we took a small stake in recently that we're really excited about and kind of how we arrived at that decision. But before we do that, some of you have heard, some of you have not, but we also made another really cool addition to our business suite, and that is Mentor Collective Mastermind now has two different tiers that you can join. There's the standard Mentor Collective, which has always been kicking ass out there. But now for more accessibility, because it doesn't fit everyone's budget, we launched MCM Essentials, which we basically took all of the most important needle moving parts that we could from Mentor Collective. It's the same mastermind. And we give you access to those for 1/5 of the investment, literally 20% of the investment. Think of it as like an 80% off sale for all the best parts. Now, it's not going to last forever. We're beta testing this thing. There's only so many people that we want to let in at this really like dirt cheap investment. So if you want to go get MCM Essentials, which is now the second tier of MCM, which is our online mastermind for any kind, whether you're brick and mortar, whether it's an online business, whether you're influencer, whether you're a podcast, doesn't matter. All you have to do is go to loriharder.com/mentor. It's right there. loriharder.com/mentor. Click join now and check it out.
If you're feeling like you are a solopreneur, especially this is for you, where you are constantly running every single thought, every single decision on your own and making sometimes what feels like the best, worst decision by yourself because you just don't know. This is incredible community, you guys. And it is so much education on the back end around exactly where you're at, which in the early phases, anywhere from, 6 months to 5 years is still considered a very early phase business because you don't know what you don't know. So what's happening right now is you're probably stuck in a lot of months where you don't know where the money is going to come from. You're very inconsistent on how you're making money. You're inconsistent on what you're putting out. You're inconsistent on where you believe the money is even going to come from. And you're probably looking at what everybody's doing online, constantly bouncing, thinking that you need to do something different. And this is kind of the death of the early entrepreneur, is never, ever knowing what they should do next. And so you need a community. You need a place where you can feel like you have a team that can really help you make your next best decisions.
Speaking of next best decisions, let's talk about this awesome business decision that we made recently. So recently, Lori and I acquired a small stake in a peptide company because it not only fit our product suite of, matches up with Glow Seas customers and all this other stuff, but more importantly, peptides have literally changed my life. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the decision-making process that Lori and I use when we decide to take a stake in a company and say, hey, we're ride or die with this thing. So some of you know that I had a stroke back in September of 2024. And those of you that have been with somebody who's had a stroke, a parent or something like that, it really messes with their brain. Well, one of the side effects of my stroke is that I've permanently lost most of my vision in my right eye. I've lost my depth perception there. I've lost my peripheral, and everything's just blurry out of that eye. And I'm lucky, basically, that was the extent of the physical, let's call it damage from the stroke, because a lot of people have a lot worse. But the mental damage that somebody goes through when you have a stroke, that's the part you can't see. It's not the tangible part, but it's probably the worst part. It really ruins and damages all your neural pathways. And then you have to form new ones over the course of a year. And so what do you do to try and form new neural pathways faster and healthier? Well, there's a lot of options out there. Therapy was one of them, not only traditional talk therapy, because you also become very depressed when you have a stroke and when your neural pathways aren't firing. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But then I forget that they call it, I think it's called CRE, where I have to play all those games and speed up my brain again. And it's almost like exercising your neural pathways again. So I had to do that. And then supplementing it. What science out there can really speed it up? And it wasn't until, 6 months in or more, maybe 9 months into my recovery, that someone's like, you should try peptides for that. And I'm not going to share them, by the way, right now. We'll give you an opportunity at the end here if you want to reach out and ask some questions, just because I don't want this to be a health advice podcast. I don't want you to like run out and be like, oh, I'm going to go get these same peptides from some random source and think it's going to help my brain too. I'm not here to say this is going to help your brain, but I do want to share my story as to why we ended up investing and taking a small stake in this company. So I try a certain set of peptides. There's 3 of them in particular that took me from being depressed. And to give you some context, I would start crying for no reason, or I'd burst out angry for no reason. I had no control over it.
I've never seen that before.
I had depression for no reason. It was wild. Like I would say to Lori, I'm like, I have no explanation. I'm just chemically depressed right now.
You started therapy over this for the first time in your whole life.
Yep. First time in my whole life. I've never experienced anything like this before. But worse yet, my superpower was gone. I couldn't follow along as somebody was talking about business really quickly. Like I literally couldn't follow along. I couldn't track. I would lose track of what I was saying all the time. I couldn't speak as fast. Halfway through a sentence, I'd say, what was I talking about again? Do you remember how often I would do that? What was I talking about again? What was I talking about again? It was so scary and so frustrating and just the worst experience of all of those emotions on top of literally not functioning properly. So I was willing to try anything at that point to get it back. Like that was my superpower. I couldn't be a business coach. I couldn't be an entrepreneur. I couldn't do those things. Mm-hmm. At least nowhere near at the capability that I had before if I didn't do something and find some way to fix it. So we come across these friends and they're like, you have to use X, Y, and Z. And I try it. And I literally couldn't believe the energy that I got back. In other words, I didn't have like this brain fatigue. I didn't have this brain fog. I didn't feel like I had to compensate with, a latte in the afternoon or something like that. Because now I was trying to avoid caffeine because that was part of the ingredient that caused my stroke in the past. I'm not going to get into the whole story, but so, I would have these working afternoons where I'm like, I have no energy, but I can't go and take caffeine. And all of a sudden, when I got on this trio, I didn't need it. And I didn't notice at first. I'm like, wait a minute. I haven't gone and gotten any caffeine or wanted any kind of boost or anything in the afternoons. What's going on? And then I realized, wait a minute. I'm keeping up with everybody's conversations, no problem, and already thinking ahead of them like I used to. So one of the weird things is if you're talking to me, I'm already thinking ahead of solutions and all this stuff that you're talking to me about. Like I can listen to the conversation and still be thinking ahead of what you're saying. And that was back. And my wit and my recall, I had totally lost my recall, you guys. It was so terrible. My wit and my recall was back. And my ability to convey a message clearly and quickly was back. And it was life-changing. And I don't even have words for it. And that's when I said, oh, I think there's something here.
So for me, I had been watching him and going, this is absolutely insane, which by the way, peptides have been part of our life off and on for 4 years. So I discovered
that for brain function,
just not for brain function. So we discovered them quite a while ago and we just didn't know the extent of like how much they could actually help so many different things, which you guys, I'm not going to share too much on here because what I want to do is next week, I'm actually going to have our business partner on with me and we're going to do a full hour-long deep dive, like answer all of your questions, all of the things, all the different things that people think about it, all of the things that I have been on, that she has been on, that Chris has been on. And we're just going to share what has worked for us. So if you want to get that episode, that is going to literally be in about a week to maximum 2 weeks. So you can watch for that because I just think that it is quite possibly the most life-changing thing that I have done for myself during some of the most stressful times of my entire life. And I'm also going to be sharing some things that are going to be a little surprising that I have not shared with people about my journey, because I'm a very close to the heart, safe person, but I also feel like this story is going to impact a lot of people.
Could free a lot of people up.
Yep.
So it changes my brain. It brings it back to pre-stroke. This is just my case, right? I'm not saying it will for you, but it brings me back to pre-stroke, like better than even when I was leading up to the stroke type of function. I literally feel like Superman right now mentally. Then I have another setback. I tear my bicep right off my shoulder. So I tore my labrum and my bicep in March. Surgery was April of 25. And that is a terrible surgery and a terrible comeback, especially for an active person. And again, somebody says, hey, you got to get on these 2 peptides while you're doing it. And by this point, I'm like, totally signed up. I'm sure it's going to work as well as the other stuff. So I get on it. And my PT, my physical therapist, who only works with Olympians and Navy SEALs, shout out Matt Zanis, and my surgeon, every time I go in for a checkup, they say, this is amazing. You're 3 to 4 weeks ahead of schedule of our best patients. Go back again. This is amazing. You're 4 weeks ahead of schedule. You're a month ahead of schedule of our best patients. This is amazing. And at that point, I'm not doing anything different other than PT with a PT expert and taking a couple of peptides that really aided in the recovery of my muscle tissue and my ligaments and speeding up the recovery. So at that point, between how it quote unquote fixed my brain for me and how it kept me a month ahead of schedule for my recovery, and now how, if you guys have been listening to the podcast a long time, I was in such good shape in 2016, 17, 18, and 19. And then 2020, when dad died and everything else happened, I got out of shape, at least in my eyes. And then from 2020 all the way through up until, about a year ago, when I was starting to recover from the surgery, I just couldn't get back into shape I wanted. No matter what I did, I couldn't get back into the shape I wanted. And you guys see me, if you follow me, it's not like I don't work out every day. It's not like I don't have trainers. It's not like I couldn't get back into shape. It's crazy. So between those 3 things, getting back into the best shape of my life right now and having my surgery always be a month ahead of schedule. But most importantly, my favorite thing that impacts me the most and the people around me the most, getting my brain function back to better than ever. I said, Lori, we have to go all in. Like, we need to take a stake. We need to start our own company. So we set out saying we're going to start our own company. Literally, we're going to go source them. We're going to go do all the stuff. And if you know anything about our schedules, we're like, oh, that ain't going to work. Like the minute I researched what it was going to take to really do it right, I was like, we don't have the capital and we don't have the time to do that. So instead, by serendipitous, we meet this incredible woman and her husband who had recently started an incredible peptide company out here in Newport Beach. And as we get to know each other and as we share our desire to start one, they say, what would it look like if we partnered? And that began the conversation that turned into us taking a small stake in the company and being able to share something that we believe not just changed our lives, not just repaired our lives, but brought our lives back to better than ever.
Okay, so if you guys really want to learn more and you're interested in it, and you also want to hear these exact stories about Chris and I and this company as well, you can text the word peptide to 310-496-8363. 310-496-8363. And what I'm also going to do is, if you are on my text list, I will be texting out that specific episode as well so that you won't miss it.
All right, guys. Well, it's changed our lives. If any of you are struggling out there with some of the stuff that I talked about, the depression, the brain fog, maybe you're post-surgery or you got an injury or something like that, we would love to share what worked so well for us. So text the word peptide to 310-496-8363.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. And if you loved this episode and know of someone else who is as successful as they are generous, please pass them on to me. It would mean the world to me if you help me get this cause and this message out to as many listeners as I can. So please, if you liked what you heard, it goes a long way if you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review and share this with your friends. I'll be forever grateful. And until the next episode, cheers to your success.